Chapter 5. Capturing Elves. Seeing that Imiya had repeatedly ordered the kidnapping and sale of elven tribe maidens, Ethan concluded that this guy was either a slaver or at least a slave trader, worthy of 1,000 cuts. After confirming that there were no ambushes around, he decided to make a small move to test his strength. Capture the leader to subdue the gang, strike the snake at its vital point. Either don't move, or move with the full force of a lion hunting a rabbit. Ethan mobilized his 200 fiercest horned beasts, splitting them into 2 teams. One team was assigned to attack the young man giving orders, Imiya, while the other team targeted the mages flying high in the air. He did not want to reveal his presence and risk being turned into a human-shaped ice sculpture, like the tree guardians by the mysterious mages. The constant screams and the thick scent of blood had already stirred the horned beasts into a frenzy. If not for Ethan's calming presence, they would have charged ahead in a chaotic swarm long ago. After being tamed by Ethan, the horned beasts not only became more powerful in combat, but also more bloodthirsty and aggressive. Sometimes, after catching their prey, they wouldn't just swallow the bones but would even lick up the blood that had spilled onto the ground, leaving none behind. Like Ethan, they also benefited greatly from consuming the blood essence of magical beasts. Their scales grew increasingly tougher, their black horns sharper, and their speed faster with each passing day. Caught off guard, the black-armored warriors stood no chance against the ferocious assault of the horned beasts. Some tried to flee in panic, only to be picked off one by the elven warriors. Others futilely swung their broadswords, as they watched the swarm of horned beasts tear into their flesh, reducing them to bare bones in an instant. Wherever the swarm of horned beasts passed, the once formidable black-armored warriors fled in disarray, and even the thick-skinned griffins were no exception. They turned tail and ran. The lucky ones barely escaped with their lives, while the unlucky ones were reduced to bones or, in some cases, just a few tufts of hair or a pool of blood. The ordinary black-armored warriors were scattered and defeated, but Imiya, who was the primary target, suffered even worse. His elite bodyguards were reduced to pools of blood in the blink of an eye. As he gazed at the horned beasts still bearing the remnants of his guards' flesh in their fangs, and listened to the chilling death cries of his protectors, he was almost scared out of his wits. Ah, my butt! In his panic, Imiya covered his eyes and vital organs, but his large buttocks were not so lucky, as chunks of flesh were torn away. Damn it! Form a formation! Kiribaz, fireball! In his confusion, Imiya accidentally cast a fireball on his own rear end. Though the fireball incinerated the horned beast attacking him, he too was scorched, experiencing the painful sensation of his backside being on fire, causing him to sweat profusely and cry tears of pain. The mage named Kiribaz reacted quickly, but the horned beasts had suddenly dispersed, attacking the terrified black-armored warriors individually. Though a barrage of fireballs was unleashed, only a few horned beasts were killed, while more than a dozen black-armored warriors ended up as charred corpses on the ground. This enraged Imiya, who gritted his teeth in fury. If not for the searing pain in his butt preventing him from moving freely, he would have rushed over and slapped Kiribaz a few times. Damn it! Form a formation! Even if you die, crawl over here! Seeing the increasing number of horned beasts, Imiya turned pale and shouted commands. While individually weak, horned beasts became a serious threat when gathered in large numbers. Without sturdy armor or enough mages, most people would avoid provoking these flocking flying beasts at all costs. In the face of certain defeat, the black-armored warriors scattered like headless chickens, with some even rolling off their low-flying mounts in their panic. Meanwhile, though strong in combat, the griffins and cloud eagles, lacking direction, fled in all directions when overwhelmed by the horned beasts. One of the griffins, the size of a young calf, lost its bearings and flew straight toward where Ethan was hiding. Hey, perfect! Ethan was not alarmed, but instead delighted to see the griffin charging toward him. With such a fast mount, he would have no trouble escaping this endless forest. In a flash, Ethan leapt from the treetop, grabbed the griffin's right claw and swiftly flipped onto its back. He then quickly bit his finger and dripped a drop of blood onto the griffin's forehead. Instantly, the griffin was enveloped in a silver glow, and mysterious runes appeared on its body, signaling that it had been tamed and was now Ethan's loyal steed. Taking a deep breath, Ethan commanded the griffin to perch on a large boulder. During the blood bonding process, he had felt his blood and spiritual power draining rapidly, leaving him utterly exhausted in just a moment. It seemed that these griffins were far stronger than the horned beasts. If they had been in the mood for battle, they could have torn him to shreds in an instant, leaving him no time to tame them one by one. Ah, help! Ah, my leg! The black-armored warriors, though swift in their movements, were no match for the overwhelming number of horned beasts. Many were torn apart before they could regroup, reduced to piles of bones or, in some cases, consumed entirely, their final agonized screams echoing in the air. The sight of the swarming horned beasts and the sound of their relentless chewing sent shivers down the spines of even the unscathed elves, not to mention the black-armored warriors. A summoner? Ibbles, we've walked right into the wood elves' ambush. Seeing the horned beasts, which coordinated their attacks precisely and targeted his warriors' weak points, and spotting Ethan emerging from the protection of one group of horned beasts, Imiya was struck with sudden realization. Horned beasts were the lowest-level magical beasts, with limited intelligence. Normally, they would swarm their enemies or prey mindlessly. However, these horned beasts, which attacked with such precision and coordination, had clearly been trained and were under Ethan's command as a summoner. Retreat, quickly! After a brief hesitation and seeing more and more of his warriors fall, with even the mages unable to protect themselves, Imiya realized the situation was hopeless. He immediately mounted his griffin and fled. Ah, my butt! Ah! In his haste, Imiya heavily sat down on the griffin, causing the still bleeding wound on his rear to grind against the griffin's hard bones, sending waves of excruciating pain through his body. But with a swarm of horned beasts chasing him, he had no choice but to endure the agony and flee for his life. DMN Elves, DMN Summoner. Just you wait, I'll be back. With only a handful of warriors left at his side, Imiya burned with fury. He had led a large force, yet now only a few remained. Not only had he failed to capture a single wood elf, but he had also suffered heavy losses.